Testing, testing. Such a delay. Testing, testing, check, check. Yep. Yep. Doo doo doo. Where is everybody? This thing is behind. Like 5 seconds behind. It was like that before though, wasn't it? Wasn't it like that before? It was like 5 seconds behind. Schedule. Well, we're gonna look at some body cams. That's the idea. Get some more people in here. If you guys want to say something in the chat so I know you can hear me, that'd be cool. Let's do it. Faux show. I like the name Faux show. I guess you can hear me then. This one is set to 18 and over, restricted. So before I start looking for something, there's a good chance that this stream gets like booted or whatever. What is it called? I don't know when they like pull it, because I'm gonna show body cameras, and the body cameras are gonna show things that YouTube probably doesn't like. But I feel like it should be okay because I have it set to 18 and over. So we'll see what happens when I start playing those body cams. But if it kicks us off, then that means I lost my live privileges. But I figured let's give this a shot, and see what happens. And if that does happen, I'll send an email, I guess, and say they messed up and see if I can get it back. They did that once for me, so if that happens, we'll see if we can do that again. And if they do give it back and say you didn't actually violate any policies or community guidelines, then I will also see if there's any way we could stop getting canceled or whatever you want to call it. But if you're in the chat, I think there's a couple of you. If you guys want to drop a like or something, help hopefully help this reach more people. If you guys have any questions though that aren't related to what we're doing, you can also just let me know and we can talk about that too. So let's see here. Let's look for a video. I figure I know LAPD has some. I want to do this in a way in which I'm not, if I sit here and play the video, because I don't really know what's going to happen, so I'm going to try to go to like the part where there's things to talk about, pause it and talk about the things before they happen, instead of playing it through. So I'll tell you where the video is if you just want to go watch the whole thing through. But if I sit here and I let the video play and then we watch it and go back, it's going to be long. It'll take a long time. Plus, I want to be able to, well, not be able to, but call things out as I see them and see how that plays out. See if you want to say like if I'm right or whatever. I'll make it on this. I'll put it on the screen so you guys can see in a second. Actually, give me a second. Let me know if you guys can't hear the audio from the video. I'll make sure you can hear it. Wish you could crop this.
that the suspect is in fact located as Pete Garcia. The front door, rear continued to leave the residence. The officers made free in an attempt to custody. The officers were attempting to struggle ensued, at which a hand from his waistband and it in the direction of simultaneously Garcia using and pointing at the officers discharged a taser that struck Garcia. The taser Garcia fired the officers, resulting in an officer off shoot.
Give me a second. I'll pull it up.
Garcia was not struck by gunfire. Connected.
So she said they tried to detain him. They tried to tase him, and then they fired at him, but he was not struck, is what they said.
A portion of was captured on the body-worn video cameras are used by most officers assigned to field duty. They are worn at perspective within line of sight from that angle. The angle of the camera prohibits viewers from seeing everything officers saw and experienced. Both audio.
I didn't think about it. Yeah, because
Listen, dude. Arrest, dude. Maybe talk to you real quick, dude. You're not under arrest. Let me talk to you about the situation. That way, in the future, you don't get arrested, all right? Come on. Listen, you're not under arrest, dude. Listen, come on. Hey, come on. Listen, dude, I'm not. Listen, dude. Listen, I'm going to talk to you right now, okay? I'm not going to handcuff you. Just stand over here so I can talk to you. Listen, dude, it's either you come over here and talk to him or go and grab you and bring you outside. Dude, really? I'm telling you right now, come here so I can talk to you about the situation, and we're done. No.
One thing that I didn't hear, and I don't know if they did, so I'll just mention it, is whether or not they asked her if he had any weapons or any guns or anything. 'Cause I think this one probably involves a gun, maybe. So that's just something that you want to ask, and if they say he does, it heightens your state of awareness at least.
Over here, away from the door. Away from the door, go over here. Listen to me, man. I'm not going to tell you again. Grab you. I don't want. Okay, so just come over here, wait. I can talk to you, and we'll go from there. All right, that's it. I'm not gonna go inside right there, so I can talk to you about whatever's going on. Give you my word, dude. Give you my word. Stand over here and we'll talk. I don't want you by that door because I don't know what's inside. I don't know who's in there. Kind of wake up right here. Come on. That's it. Come on.
I think this guy, someone asked what they're there for. I think it was let's go back real quick. I think it was like
of Paxton Street. The caller hit her husband with location, then the call. While officers were responding to the location, contact was reinitiated. The caller informed the that her husband had been at the location since left on foot in an unknown direction. Is the 911 call and police officer uses to arrest the suspect. Viewers is advised for young children and others. Foothill Division patrol officers respond to violence restraining radio call in 15,200 Paxton Street. The front door of the rear
Restraining order violation. So this gentleman is not supposed to be here or within, a certain vicinity of this lady, his wife, I guess, or ex-wife, or whatever.
Hey, do me a favor, just stay over, okay? Just stand right here. Stand right here so I can talk to you. Stand right here so I can talk to you. Stand right here. Just stand right here. Just stand right there. I'm here just to... All right, I'm done. Please. What are you grabbing? I'm not grabbing. Hey, put your hands up. Put your hands out of the way.
They're not gonna arrest you. They're just gonna bring. They just want to talk to you.
Hey, put your hands up. Right now.
They're not gonna arrest you. They're just gonna bring. They just want to talk to you. They just want to talk to you.
Back up out of the house.
Well, since it's LAPD, probably going to see them with their radio in their hand and a weapon in their other hand, whether it's a less lethal option or a firearm, because that's what they do for some reason. I know, tradition or something. I'll also say it does look like he is. I'll answer your question or your statement in a second. You could do all this stuff from the threshold too. I understand that at some point they were gonna maybe go in there and grab him, but he put his hand behind his back like that. He acted like he had something. Like, if you're on the taser, like, that's a good time to get that done right then. Because what happens, and I don't know what's going to happen here, but like you hear me talk about this, is cops usually wait too long. They usually wait until the moment in which deadly force is authorized, and then you have someone deploying the taser at the same time. They're shooting, and that's like not the idea. The idea is that the less lethal option will prevent you from having to use lethal force. And so, and because at this point the bad guy had his hand behind his back and then he brought it out and he didn't have anything, it really does make you feel like he doesn't have anything. But just imagine if he did reach behind his back right now and pulled out a gun. Like, that's going to be a terrible time, because look at all this stuff everywhere, right? There's nowhere to go. And it's just going to be very chaotic, and the physiological responses are going to take over your body probably, and trying to, not get shot. Now you're in conflict with one another because one of your guys is behind you. And so it's always best to just like try to keep everything in front of you and open up your field of view and use whatever barricades or barriers in between you and the suspect. And so like the threshold is a good spot. And so if we're at the threshold and we're talking to this guy and he's not listening, he's saying F you, you're gonna have to come in here and get me all these things. Like, at the moment in which you cross over the threshold and you're back there with your partner, whoever, it's like, come up with a plan right there. You're looking at him, start communicating with one another. He doesn't have to be able to hear you. He's pretty far away, relatively to how loud you would have to talk in order for your buddy to hear you and him not to. And, communication could be something like, hey, when he makes it past this point, deploy the taser, or whatever, as long as it meets the policy and use of force and all that. And then once he is or is not feeling the effects of the taser, then you can move in. Because obviously if the taser isn't working and not effective, then maybe it's not okay or good at that point to move in. Joseph, you said that you're not a fan of using a taser with your strong hand. I guess there's nothing saying that you can't use your weak hand. Well, at least, our department. But, we have to have our taser on the opposite side of our gun. So it would be awkward to draw, at least with your left hand, unless you have it set up a different way. The videos always frustrate me because I feel like they give too many opportunities. I don't want him on your quarterback, but all of the back and forth is giving him time to conduct a plan. Yeah, exactly. Current officer in moderate sized city in Virginia for 5 years. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, and then like the closer that you get to him, and we'll see what happens. But the closer you get to him, and he's acting this way, it just complicates things. It closes your reactionary gap. It doesn't give you time to think, and react. And also, like in the video I posted about, clearing the bathroom or the restroom. When you go in, you hold the door with your foot, so you have an opportunity to egress out of there. Well, the farther you get inside here, the less chances you have to do that, right? So let's see what happens.
Close that door. You're gonna have to fucking shoot me. Someone's gonna shoot you. No, you're gonna have to shoot me, dude. You're gonna have to kill me. You're gonna have to kill me. I'm not gonna go with you. We're not gonna go to jail. No, you're telling me I'm willing, but now I am.
I'll say this too, like he's non-compliant. He's already reached behind his back like he had something. And, you probably could tase him here, right? Not just because he's non-compliant, but because of all the things, right? The totality, saying that he's, actively resisting, right? Doesn't have to, necessarily, again, verbiage is different throughout different states and whatnot, but he doesn't have to be physically trying to fight you. Like if a guy balls up his fist and says, F you, come get some or whatever. Okay. Like, again, making, if a taser makes sense from a tactics perspective, that's probably good enough because he's demonstrated his willingness, right, to do that. And so at the moment in which this guy does anything else at this point, you have to take that opportunity. So let's see.
You're not behaving, that's why. No, just stand over here, that's all I gotta do. That's all you gotta do. If you're gonna shoot me, yeah? But you wanna put me in jail? I don't wanna go to jail. All I wanted to do was talk to you. You're talking to me. We're talking. I told you that I'm not gonna.
21 longer.
Look, right. I'm gonna put this back real quick. No, back. Please, back. My wallet. What are you grabbing back? Look it. Let go.
What are we doing though? Why are we waiting? Like, what are you grabbing back there? I'm grabbing my wallet. Like, why are we waiting to figure out what he's gonna pull out from behind his back? It should have been done already. And is it gonna be effective? I don't even know. But the closer also this officer gets with this taser, the less effective his taser is going to be.
Put your hands out right now. You don't.
Put your hand.
I will fucking tase you, dude. And it's gonna hurt.
You're gonna shoot me.
All right?
Shoot me, dude. I'm not. Because I don't want to go to jail. I'm not gonna go to jail. And all I want. Problem. The more.
We're gonna be in the back house.
The whole radio thing again. We got our radio. This spread right here. I forget what it is, but on this type of taser, is it even going to be effective at this range? I don't know.
It's gonna be in the back of.
I wasn't.
Like, what if this dude pulls a gun out right here? What's going to happen? Everyone's going to freak out and try to do something. And most of it is usually never adequate.
I wasn't.
That's crazy to me. So the guy's got his hand behind his back, and he's acting like he has a gun. And we got our gun in one hand, and we're literally reaching out to grab this guy and try to control him, which you cannot do. Like it's not possible. You cannot control another guy with one hand, and your gun in your other hand. Like, one, that's against policy. Probably you're not supposed to do that anyways. But just from a actual physically being able to control somebody, how do you do that? Like, you can't do it. It doesn't work. And so we're reaching towards this guy to grab the only hand we do see. And so what happens? Oh, brings a gun out. Bang. That's it.
Hey, don't do it, dude. I'm a taser, dude. Don't fucking do this. Don't fucking.
Okay. I guess. I don't know. No. So, like, you guys have heard me talk about. I'm sorry if you didn't see that. Let me go back. I got to figure out a way to crop this so you guys can see the whole thing. Let's see. Just go back a little bit. Play it. So he's saying, don't make me do this. Don't make me do this. So that's like telling me the guy has a gun. I don't know if he does. But that's it, right? And I've talked about this before. The drive stun on a taser, you should pretty much never do it. Because, and even the taser, you know, it's happened to me before. I had a guy that was like resisting. He was on the ground and I drive stunned him either in the back or the lower leg area. And he elbowed back when I did that, and it hit me in the face, and you know, we handled it or whatever. But you know, that was early on. And then, you know, you guys have heard me talk about drive stunning with your taser. Even Taser's website, under their manual of the taser, says that drive stunning people can cause them to kick or jolt away, says something like that. And that's usually what happens. It actually just makes your job harder, right? This guy's trying to control him. You're drive stunning him, which is making the guy do all these things and pull away from you. So you're better off searching for control with this guy. Let me go over these comments real quick. That was the best statement I've heard. Cops and to some extent military keep going into a situation so deep that they have limited their options. Yeah, it's a common thing, and you know, it's one of those things where it worked out, right? Yeah, all the time. I think I posted on Instagram, my last post on Instagram, I said, you know, we're talking about CQB, and I said, you know, whether or not you get seriously hurt or killed is going to have less to do with how you got there and more to do with where you're standing and why you are there, right? And really that comes down to it all, doesn't it? Like, if you look back on every officer that's probably been killed, you know, especially inside of structures, and it's like, you know, the things that I see every day, basically, that, you know, they're doing, it's just unnecessary. Unnecessary levels of accepting unnecessary risk. So 7 to 15 yards for one taser probe below the waist and one probably above and below. I don't think it's 7 to 15, but the wider the spread, at least. And it's, I don't want to look it up, but and actually they're getting better, I believe. I don't think there has to be much of a spread on the newer ones that are coming out, but they shoot like single projectiles instead of two at the same time. They are allowing him to assess the battlefield and make a plan. Drive stun needs to counter pressure, or dudes just pull away. Yeah. Also, if you guys are going to use abbreviations, either, I mean, it's okay. I just might not know what it is and have to ask you. So if you don't use abbreviations, I know what you're talking about.
Shots fired, underneath help. Shots fired, underneath.
Holy crap. You could hear the panic in the officer's voice. You go, oh, you know. Which is, this is not going to work. You know, like, I'm going to go back a little bit, but because I don't know what you guys saw. But this is not going to work. You know, you got to be able to identify like what you're capable of accomplishing. And unfortunately, or fortunately, or whatever, this cop is on top of this guy at this point. So get over there, you know, and get your hands in there. Let me go back just to make sure you guys can see. It looks like they're fighting over a gun. I think that's the suspect's gun. Now we got our radio in our hand. It's unnecessary. If you buy something off of my a cloth, or I guess an item or clothing item, probably off the website, I can send you a free lapel mic. So You got to add it to your cart though. But it's just complicating things, you know. We had our taser, now we have our gun, which is fine because we got the transition sometimes. But now we have our radio in our hand, and so what are we doing? Are we talking on the radio? Are we helping? Because you know there is a time and a place to be on your radio, and I am a big proponent of your radio and being able to use it effectively. And wherever you place your radio on your belt, still working. Is this working right now? Say something in the chat if I'm still live. Is this working right now? I guess it is working. It's not pulled up on my screen though. Oh, okay. I don't know what happened my screen that I was looking at myself, but I guess it's working. All right, cool. I'll just keep it up on my phone as well. All right, I got it on my phone now so I can see what you guys are seeing. Anyways, let's see if I can go over neuromuscular incapacitation.
Shots fired, underneath help. Shots fired, underneath.
He dropped his gun? Is that his gun? Hey, I guess he dropped his gun. Oh yeah, the bad guy had a gun. Right? It says officer got shot. It says this is slow-mo of what happened. Let me go back. Sorry, guys. You figure out a way to crop this so it'll all fit on your screen. But it shows that he has a gun, I guess. Oh, wow. Give me a second. This is not good. You'll see he points the gun at this officer right here.
Los Angeles Fire Department did it by Garcia. Did by local. Firearms.
Oh, that was crazy. But I think we covered it all. Like, I think like the general rule, well, is that you want to put the bad guy in a compromising position before you approach him if you can. If you're standing at the threshold and he's doing all the things he's doing, obviously we're trying to talk to him and just be, you know, say what we can to get him to comply. And when that's not happening, you know, the best thing you could do is develop a plan to go after him. But an officer could have got killed right there. So wasn't very good.
Central Division patrol officer responded to a radio call of an deadly weapon in 400 block. Had report.
Apartment. And I know he has. For sure. Very scared.
Distraction. Upon arrival to the location, officers told that Frank gun at her. Distraction. The victim. Doorway of the apartment with what appeared and fired the weapon. Officer involved. Frank's struck by gunfire and immediately retreated. The officers requested help. All officers following telephonic rendered. Officer involved. Frank's
Sorry guys, give me a second.
and immediately retreated. The officers requested help.
Just watch the gun recoil from the cop.
Frank's doorway of the apartment with what appeared struck by gunfire and immediately retreated.
I like that. That's pretty good. How they tuck behind this wall here. And it seemed like, I don't know how long they were there for, but let's go back. They come out of the elevator, they identify one door, and then they identify the complainant's door. They never knock. That's good. And now they're kind of talking about what to do real quick. I will say this is not a good situation just to set up. As far as where you have to stand to knock on the door. They get a bunch of credit for that one because they just were standing in the right place. You know what I mean?
35, can I get additional units?
And there's not much going to be from the other officers, but that's pretty good. Didn't take it for granted, and they put themselves in the best position that they could. What was it I said earlier and that I posted on Instagram? It's going to come down to where you are and why you're there. Literally, where you're standing, why you're standing there. Especially because we are always behind, and we have to react, and they just open doors and shoot guns. I'm gonna look for another one. Every now and then I find a police department I'm not subscribed to. But some of them don't use their website or their YouTube for officer involved shootings. It doesn't look like they. No, they do. Oh, okay. I have seen this one, but we're gonna look at it anyways.
Reference. After being.
Got a whole bunch of shit in my room.
So we need to go up there and clear it out. Boss man,
Listen, you're not listening to me because I'm not leaving the place that my name is on the property.
what you gonna do? Go first.
The officers were on scene. Helping him. Following.
Back here, not charges.
Going to jail. I'm done. Going to jail.
At approximately. Right, receive. It is at this. However. Wait.
Man,
Don't know if he did this or not, or if he has somebody there with him. Sounded like the guy left and came back like he told him not to come back or he's gonna go to jail. And then once the dude pulls away from him and he had his hands on him, you know he's gonna have to commit. You know, not just gonna let the guy just walk off and you know. That's what I was asking. He said, "Is the officer alone?" Sounds like it. And so if you are, just based on what this guy did earlier, so if I'm there and I see him again, just before you even make contact with him, just say, "Hey, send me another unit," or use whatever lingo you have. Send me another unit. He's back again. And I would also add, try to delay having to put your hands on him until that other unit gets there if you can. Can't always do that, but that's an option, or that's the best option, because you don't want to be fighting a guy by yourself. So the taser is ineffective. And, you know, what's crazy is I have had tasers not work, but they've always not worked not because of like I think there's this misconception that there's individuals that are walking around that can just withstand the volts of a taser. And yeah, that's the case. Like people that are on PCP or maybe some other drugs, that does happen. But usually when a taser isn't effective, it's user error. Because, you know, I've seen taser darts hit people's belts, right? Their leather belt, one of the prongs. Being too close, not getting enough spread is a common issue. seems to be the case here. And if we go back just a little bit, you know, instead of like, you're within arm's reach, right? Because we're also worried about losing our taser and the guy getting a hold of it. So just back up. If you know you're going to use your taser, just back up. I mean, that's the whole point, is that you don't have to be close to them to use it. Oh, Lord.
Get off me! Hey, man. Bro, I'll hurt you!
Violent.
Holy crap, dude. Are you serious? He freaking took his gun and walked away with it. I don't even know. Like, you're dead. And you know what? The reason that happened has, I mean, sure, like, okay, there's a bunch of things to cover. One, just wait, right? Don't interact with the guy. Wait for backup. Create distance. Wait for backup. Too close with the taser, it's not effective. This dude's, super aggressive. And, now he's coming at you. Now you're going to try your baton. Like, those are terrible. They never work. You shouldn't even carry it. Anytime there's a video of an officer hitting somebody with something with one of those, it's never a good video. Okay. And they don't work. When people are like that, they don't work. Okay. So we're going through all these options that aren't working. And then what happens is the guy gets the better of him in a physical, fight. He's not more skilled, right? This guy lives on the street, stronger, whatever, on drugs, whatever he is. It says he gives his arm around the officer's neck, and then the officer draws his firearm, right? And guess what he probably thought? Draw my firearm, I'll be able to shoot him and this will be over, right? And I get it. Like, and also maybe the suspect had his arm around the officer's neck and he was losing consciousness, or thought he could lose consciousness. So he, said, okay, draw my gun and save myself. And then at that point, the suspect averted his attention from his neck to his gun. I don't know. But actually, I'm going to turn this up, and I think you hear the officer, like, almost pleading for his life when the guy takes his gun. Like, no. Something like that. Let's hear what he says. Luckily, the guy just walks away.
A passerby can be firearm discharges, striking the officer. Suspect.
Shoot me! They're trying to shoot me! Shoot me! Quit! Quit! Stab with the center of the taser! No! Quit!
I heard the officer yell like a very desperate no. I'm sure in that moment he thought he was going to die. He got shot in the hand. on narrate. So this is a true story, and this doesn't make any sense to me. But I was in a class one time, and they used what happened was an officer showed up on a trespassing deal, like similar to this. The guy was on. Well, I'm not going to be specific, but anyways, showed up, and the officer had dialogue with this individual, and the person was obviously not going to listen to what the officer had to say. He was saying similar things like, "Nah, I'm not leaving," all that stuff. And this went on for a while. I want to say at least 15 minutes. And the whole time I'm like, oh, just call for another unit. Call for another unit. Like as soon as somebody is telling you no, just call for another unit. Like, nah, I'm not leaving. Like, okay, man. Right. And what ended up happening was this officer never called for another unit, got into a physical fight with this guy, and couldn't even get to his radio because something with his lapel mic and all that. And he's just out of breath, this dog tired. And I think he obviously eventually is able to get to his radio and get help. But the whole time, and then that was actually used as a good example of something. I don't remember what it was, but I'm just thinking, why would you not call for backup? I really do think that there is actually, I know for sure, there's people or cops, right? They have like this pride of like not calling for backup. I don't know, an ego thing or whatever you want to call it, but this dude comes back as soon as, based on what this guy did earlier, as soon as I see that guy, I'm just saying, hey, send me another unit. He's back over here. At least you have them come in your direction at a minimum, right? Again, my philosophy is like delay, right? Delay for as long as possible. And then, you put your hands on them when you have to. People drunk, high, mentally ill, taser didn't work. Yeah, I mean, that's true, right? There are situations, they're not just like average people. They're drunk, or maybe they're drunk, they're high, mentally ill people, right? Okay. But there's a good chance too that you also don't know. Like I'm not saying like, okay, yes, the taser didn't work for you, but you don't necessarily know. Well, maybe you do or you don't. Did the darts have good contact? And maybe and a lot of times you're not even able to figure that out because it's like a mess and things are everywhere and nobody actually looked to see if the darts were in them, or they have clothes on, so you don't really know where the other dart went and you only found one. Again, the spread. So yeah, there's times when they don't work. I just don't believe that the times that they don't work, it's due to these people just being able to withstand taser, but sometimes they can't because of their health stat or intoxication levels or whatever. That was a crazy one. Here's another one. Officer shot during home invasion. Wait, no. Drug-related home invasion? Okay, here's the thing that I talk about all the time. At night it's really hard to do anyways, like lights, sirens, whatever. But arriving, what do they call it? Silent, maybe, if you can, may help. But bad people are doing bad things at night. They see a car approaching, But here's the thing. I don't know what's going to happen here. I think it says officer shot. But I'm telling you that if this officer does shoot, he's probably going to end up shooting one-handed. And that's because he already has his light in his hand. So, talk about this all the time. It's okay to have your handheld light because sometimes you do. Like, you show up, you don't really know what's going on. You're not at the point where you're pointing your gun at, things yet. Although I'm very liberal about doing that because I'm conscious about having two hands on my gun and be able to be accurate. And if you're, depending on the call, like, you can have your gun out and you can, point your gun in directions. And there's enough light here to see probably that you're not, you can see everything in your immediate area anyways. And also there's a disadvantage to having your handheld light. You're showing up. This is drug-related home invasion. I assume some suspects broke into some house for some drugs, and you show up and it's at night, right? So you have your light and you're like, well, what house is it? And whose cars are these in the driveway? Like all that stuff that you're doing is actually telling people like you're the cops and you're outside and you're right there. So just be careful about that when you're doing that. But it looks like he started a foot pursuit. He has a weapon light and he has not made the conscious decision to transition over to his weapon light. So if he does shoot, I believe he's probably going to shoot one-handed. Whew. Looks like a bad guy came out right there at that time. Shot him. Oh, shoot. Oh, man. He's bleeding bad.
Everybody inside.
Let's see if I can read what happened. The round struck one of the responding officers. Oh, see. Gave chase, gave verbal commands. Suspect did not comply during the foot pursuit. Another involved suspect emerged from the residence and began firing. The round struck one of the responding officers, and they immediately returned fire. The injured officer transported with serious injuries and was taken to surgery. Officers in stable condition. Less than a week later after the shooting, officer was discharged. All three suspects were apprehended and charged within 10 days of the incident. So I assume the officer didn't hit the guy, which is, that's a difficult thing to do in that situation. Again, because this guy's running away, right? I think there was two different guys. So he ran after one guy, I think it looked like, and then he turned, which is a good thing that he turned. I mean, I'm inclined to believe that if he had his back turned, the bad guy probably would have turned the other direction and ran away from him without shooting at him undetected. But the guy comes out right here in a hurry, and can't see. You can't see what the. I mean, he has a gun obviously because he shoots the cop, but he runs out of the house. The door's open, and there's a shooting right here. Officer shot. Suspect is like falling down. But I know this is like I'm being like nitpicky here because I've never been shot before, but consider it looks like the suspect has his back to him and he's suspect coming down, and that's just a decision that you're going to make in the moment. Is it better, safer to get out of there and get offline maybe, or just get away? Because it looks like he does start shooting one-handed. Because it sounds like you can hear him shooting, unless that's the suspect's rounds. Oh yeah, so I saw one guy run out of the house right there. Yeah, it looked like the officer turned back one-handed and shot. Again, not ideal. So I would think that they knew what house it was because the cop was orientated. I don't know how you say it. Towards that house as the first guy came running out the back. I would say like as a more of a common practice, if you knew that was the house, don't be on like right next to the house, right? You could be across the street looking at that house. And you could even be in the darkness across the street looking at the house, right? It's maybe lit in the street. And so where you're standing is lit, but you could stand, okay, I'm looking at the house. I have this, I can see the front, I can see the side. I'm going to hold in this corner right here. Because realistically, that's what you're doing when you respond to, at least initially till you get enough assets, right? Maybe so, depending. I don't know, the sense of urgency to push on something like that, they may be there. But Try to keep everything in front of you, and then the guy comes running out. Like, I feel like if you knew that was the house, you're probably too close to the house to begin with, right? Because the closer you are to barriers or objects, right? Working cover, right? There was I think it was 2016, all the Dallas officers were killed. And that one cop who was using that pillar, and he was engaged the suspect, but he was so close to the pillar that he never saw the suspect coming around the pillar on this side. A lot of the things that you can do when you're trying to, get a bead on these individuals, you can do it from farther back. If they're already close to you, then yeah, you need to be farther back. If they're far away from you, then it doesn't really matter how close you are to the barricade necessarily. People may argue like, well, debris off of the barricade or whatever, but that's not the biggest concern. And so if he was farther back across the street, he could have kept everything in front of him, saw that guy run, and probably still has to run after that guy. You notice that he did stop though, so the cop ran after him, but then stopped. So why did he stop? Right? He probably stopped because he realized, well, I don't know where this guy went. If I continue to go after him, now I'm giving up the house. So I guarantee that's probably what he was thinking. And so he said, okay, I'm going to turn around and continue to do what I was doing, because that guy, I leave here, I'm giving up the house. So, but we could do that from try to, get some space. Let's see if there's any comments. Deaf civilian, hands in pockets, and boom, he notices the police aiming at him. What are the movements in details that the person should do if you can show? Well, I mean, just come out of your pockets with nothing in your hands. Nothing is great, but if they don't know or they have their phone in their hands, look, I mean, cops are supposed to have positive identification before they engage people and have a reason for why they're doing it. So there's nothing, wrong with that. I mean, if you're asking, like if a deaf person was asking for advice in that situation, I'd like say, well, the best thing you could do is just get on the ground with your hands in your pockets and then face down and pull your hands out of your, I mean, that's an extreme, but like, I mean, you can't just shoot people because they're pulling their hands out of their pockets. Current officers figure out if you can shoot fast and accurately in low light with just one hand. Are you telling officers to figure out if they can? It's kind of like I'm not. It's yes, do it, know how to do it, be good at it. But cops can't shoot with two hands on their gun. So I don't really care what they can do on a range with one hand, right? The only time that you should be shooting one-handed is in acts of desperation, which is like, oh my gosh, the guy's so close to me that I'm just going now, or he's going for my gun and I pull my gun out, right? Acts of desperation, or you're injured and you can't use your other hand. That's it. You have a weapon light on your gun. So I think a better class, right? And I don't know what the low light classes teach necessarily. So I'm not speaking on any people, classes, or levels of instruction or anything. But look, under stress, cops aren't using, with two hands, cops aren't shooting accurately. And like, we're not doing this anymore, right? Now, some departments have to because they're not allowed to have weapon lights. Then yes, you should do that. And you should do it anyways, even if you have a weapon light. But you should understand the time and the place and understand when it's time to transition. And you should just not have your light in your hand when that happens. Like, it's silly to walk around and deal with people that you're pointing your gun at and you still have your light in your hand. Like, it just doesn't make sense. So you should just transition whenever you practically can do that. I'm gonna try to like maybe if I could put together some videos and blur things out because this live is not reaching anybody because it is set to. Can I edit it? I think I can. Wonder if I can change that. If we get some more people in here, took it off to 18. Well, if I have this off of restricted, I can't probably watch these. Because then if there's a shooting, that's not for anybody that's under 18 for sure. Don't want to do that. That would probably be maybe not a strike, but it would definitely not help things. But I bet if I go over videos, which I don't really want to do, and I blur things out and silence them, then technically I should be able to allow the videos to be for people under 18. Although, I mean, I'm not saying like I want people under 18 in this chat room or this live. I'm just saying that if it's not restricted, then this will be viewed to more people that are over 18 even. When I entered the channel, YouTube jammed me with a warning that the content may be graphic. Okay, that's good. Well, yeah, that's because I had it had it restricted because we were watching, I don't know if you've been here, but we were watching body cameras. But I just changed it to not that. So thanks. Hope we'll never need to use. Anyways, I don't know. We'll just keep this like not restricted and see we get more people in here and they'll maybe get more questions instead of going over body cameras. The idea is for people to see it, but if nobody's seeing it, I don't really want to do it. Did you guys see the recent video I did? And do you have any thoughts on that? Questions, comments, concerns? So this drills question, I'm going to answer it, and I'm going to answer it in a way in which I've always answered this question. So I hope it doesn't disappoint you. But, you know, there's in the Surviving the Street community, which is linked, I believe, in this description of the chat, I have a 15-minute dry fire accountability program. And in that program, you know, once you figure out the process and I have it all printed out. You can print it or whatever, and what you're doing, and you understand really everything it takes to do that correctly, and you can get it actually done in 15 minutes, it is like hard. And I wanted to create something that I felt like people would actually do and like at their house. And so I felt like if I could make it 15 minutes, it's a reasonable idea that someone could do it once or twice a month or whenever. And so I'm just like, I'm very basic, like on the range. There's certain things that I do a lot of, and it's like, you know, 1 round from the holster for time, 2 rounds from the holster for time, and then ready positions, right? Like repping the ready positions, because every engagement is a ready up drill, right? Unless you happen to be in a fixed position, you're looking down your sights and you're getting ready to take a shot, right? And you have time to do all that. So I really, you know, rep the things that are the far most likely to, you know, happen, and emphasis on those things. And I don't really do a lot of drills, so I don't have a good answer for you. I couldn't name one. Which you did ask about drills, but now I don't see it. Oh wait, maybe you did. Oh, okay, yeah, you did. But like, you know, right now I'm just I'm gonna say I have a lot going on. I mean, I do. Trying to do all these things, and the one thing I'm not able to really do a lot of right now is my own training. I still do it. I just don't do as much as I would like. I'd like to do a lot more. But I'm so committed to doing all these things that you guys see me doing that working on myself in that regard with, you know, 4 kids and all that, it's hard. And so like I get training sessions in when I go and shoot my videos. But I don't have a good answer, I guess. Stress that you're going over body cam footage and use of Force iOS for training purposes. Yeah, that's what I said at the beginning. If it ends up like booting me, then we'll go down that road. And I don't think that's a problem, because you can make videos on that and post it on your YouTube channel. But if you show the gunfire, and I think in one of the videos, one of the cops was bleeding pretty bad, then you have to restrict that video. Like you have to do it yourself. But YouTube will do it for you if you don't, basically. And that's not a big deal. But when you do that, it doesn't get recommended by YouTube. So when I did it, like we had 3 or 4 people in here, and I thought it was good information. I didn't quite get the making sure you guys were seeing everything. I needed to figure out how to crop the screen so that's the only thing you'll see at the bottom there. I think it was okay, but there was only 3 or 4 people in here, and as soon as I took it off of 18 or over, now there's 43 people. So if you guys are watching this though, you want to help me reach more people, you could like this chat or like this live. That'd be cool. Appreciate it. I also was looking at that video that I put out. Man, I gotta figure out. I'm about at the point where I'm gonna start shooting everything with my iPhone, because it's just crazy how I shoot the video. It looks one way, get back, play the video, try to do things with the lighting, because it doesn't look right on my screen basically, and then when I post it, it also looks different than what it looked all those other times. And I mean, I don't know what it is exactly, but I was expecting that video, I don't know, I thought that video would do okay. I do say that you never know with YouTube anyways, but it also says right here, Basically says their YouTube is experiencing issues for real-time data, and this may cause inaccurate view counts and reports of video performance. So it could be doing better than it shows. I don't know. Just want to make videos on things I want to make videos on. So if they don't do well, then whatever. But over also on the Surviving the Street community side, I essentially want to do the body camera stuff over there, but in a way in which it was kind of done here. So basically what you could say is not for the algorithm, right? And more or less like after action reviews or reports, after action reviews. But in a way it's more like a conversation. I did two. One was on an incident that I did, and then another one was on, forget which video it was, but I went into it thinking like, okay, 5-10 minutes max, do this. And I'm looking at it actually right here. It says armed burglar. That's what it was. And that video is 27 minutes. And I was like, when I made it, when I was like at the end of it, I was like, yeah, I wanted this to be a short video, but it doesn't look like I did that. It ended up being 27 minutes because I don't cut it really, take anything out of it. And I mean, all the information that's in there needs to be in there, but you know how you seen the other videos I did where it's like cutting and zooming in and the pictures and things like that. I just don't really want to do that. So live fire once every 3 weeks and dry fire 4 times per week. 20 minutes. Tracking my times in notebook. Yeah, that's good. There's a video on my Instagram. It had to be last summer. And I think we didn't even shoot that much. Me and my buddy went to the range and we did all the things that I like to do. And I think we were out there for 2.5 hours. And we maybe shot 150 rounds each. And I'm a big proponent of like quality of work and focus over shooting a lot of rounds. One, because I don't have the money for it or the ammo to do it anyways. But if you really are like focusing on what you're working on, and I actually would think in that video I like showed my hands, they were just like red, right? Not because I was, just from normal like pressure on the gun and shooting the gun. And so that's what I'm about. I don't feel like you have to have a whole lot of ammo. In fact, if you don't have a whole lot of ammo and you go to the range and you have, let's say, you say you have 100 rounds. You said you have 100 rounds. Like, do a bunch of stuff, like dry fire, before you actually shoot. One thing that I actually do is, I always start from the holster, right? So time from the holster, 1 round, 7 yards, 10 yards. And before I get to the live fire portion, I do it dry. So do it dry, ammo inserted, but no round in the chamber. And then, or you could just do it with no mag, it's fine. And then put, basically load the weapon. And what I do is I try to do some reps where I'm coming out of the holster and my finger's on the trigger as if I'm going to fire. I go to the wall and then I back off. And, when you're training that, if you decide to do that or whatever, because that can happen, right? I mean, you go to pull the trigger, you realize, oh, that's not what I thought it was, because you're trying to come out of the holster, or you stop. Which I've not come out of the holster that way, but I have done that before. Had my finger on the trigger and not shot. Like it was a very, let's say unique, but like niche situation where like a bunch of stuff had already happened. Guy had already shot at people, us, and he was just like he was armed at that moment, and I was probably say like 12 yards away, and I was just waiting for him to literally do anything. And there's a little bit more to the story, but he didn't, and I only had a short window of like 2 seconds before I couldn't see anymore, 2 or 3 seconds, and so it just didn't happen. But I like to do that to get comfortable with the wall and where the wall is. And if you do that and you fire your gun, that's fine because you're facing downrange and you are, trying to work that type of discipline. So. Check out the Dry Fire program by Steve Anderson. Not a cop, but could train one. Yeah. I think like most people that actually train cops or can train cops have never been a cop, which is okay as long as it's something like, well, they always train like marksmanship, right? But you don't have anybody else training warrant execution other than a cop, right? You don't have, at least I haven't seen yet. Something might pop up. A vehicle class trained by military guys to train cops. I posted something on the Instagram where it showed like it was supposed to be DevGru, I guess. They got out of a Blackhawk and got online and unloaded several magazines at a car full of bad guys and killed them, and that's fine. And there's a bunch of weapons in there, and that's cool. And I'm kind of like in that message I talked about. Like imagine a military guy. I said something about like a military guy creating a vehicle interdiction class. I said something too about like if you think there's anything difficult about getting off of a helicopter, getting online and dumping mags into a moving vehicle, that's just not the case. And so I also think that people have this, obviously they do cool things. They're very good at the things that they do, and they have a expertise in a lot of things. But that's a great example of like this is what happens in the military. This is the military compared to law enforcement, and from an accuracy perspective or a accountability perspective with marksmanship in the military or overseas or in combat or whatever, it's just not there. Like they just I commonly say in law enforcement, you're accountable for every round, and if something goes wrong, like you might end up in court. And in the military, it's like, you hear shots being fired, everybody gets down, and they're like, "Where's it coming from?" You're like, 300 meters. Like where? Like tree line over there. You're like, okay, and that's where you start sending rounds. 300 meters to the tree line, just anywhere in the tree line. Obviously, you want to start figuring out where that's coming from so you can be more accurate, but that's the reality of, being, in the infantry, I should say at least. But, look at those videos from, and I think this is a really great example. The Israeli Special Forces guys, that I've been posting too. And they're in the houses and they're just shooting, not everywhere, but they're shooting, trying to shoot through walls. shooting into rooms as they're going into them. And they're doing all those things. And, you know, that's what being in the military is like and being in combat is like. And it's not necessarily, you know, if you're in a house full of insurgents, caring a whole lot about where your rounds are going. You know, obviously, I want to hit our guys that are in adjacent rooms and things like that, but no, you don't see cops doing that usually because it's just not comparable. I've heard people try to compare the two, and yeah. I also posted one on there about speed and CQB. Surprised that nobody really commented on that, like got mad. I think I've probably I don't know, not hearing from the people anymore, but there's this I don't want to say misconception. Well, I posted something also in my Instagram story about I'm really interested in this idea of speed. And I said, because, you know, either you're too slow or you're too fast. You're either too slow or you're too fast. And all of that is usually dependent on the unknown, right? Like what's happening. What do we know? What don't we know? What do we believe? And so we determine how fast we're moving off of that. And when is speed? And I also think, like, quite frankly, and this is, you're going to see this more. Like it's happening now if you guys are paying attention, like the tactical space or whatever, about dynamic entries and speed, surprise, and violence of action, right? So here's like the reality. There was a video that somebody posted. I tried to find the original, couldn't find it. So if you guys know where it is, let me know. There's a video of basically a SWAT team doing a dynamic entry in terms of they're moving fast. I don't know if there was bangers or not, but it didn't really matter because the guy was not in the vicinity where the bangers would have hit him anyway because he was down the hall. And as soon as they make entry, he runs into a back room and he's like, this is on video in the room. There's like a camera. And he's like walking in circles, like anticipating them coming. And if you had it on the clock, I would say there was anywhere from 5 at the least to 15 seconds before they got the door open. And I'm just like, oh, this is speed, surprise, and violence of action. You know what I mean? And the defenders of that would just go, oh no, well, that's not it. They should have thrown bangers down the hallway. They should have ported the windows. They should have overwhelmed the structure with speed, surprise, and violence of action. Then he would have just been incapacitated and got down because he was so afraid that he would have never been able to engage anybody. And I just don't buy it. And sure, there's times and cases where that has happened, right? But I believe that a lot of what was valid in terms of, hey, it worked, it's based off the guy not fighting you, right? Or just being in the right place at the right time to be able to see the guy grabbing a weapon because you're a window team or whatever. Or in terms of speed, and yeah, basically, or the suspect saying, right? A lot of times that's what they do too. These guys ask them, hey, so when you heard us coming, what did you know? And like, oh, I was so scared. I didn't know what to do. You're like, oh, see it work, guys. You know, like, yeah, I've seen, and a lot of guys will just justify the things that they do, right? Because they want to do it. And, you know, talking about dynamic entries, or not dynamic, but like no knock warrants, right? They're like becoming a thing of the past, and I think it's fine. I think everybody's just going to be safer for it. Now, like, let's ask ourselves, let's look, right? And don't know if this is the case. I think it'd be hard to find one. Has there been any officers that have been killed on a planned warrant surrounding call out? Right? Now, there's officers that have been killed on barricaded suspects, right? Because they respond to the scene of a situation that has already escalated to the point where these guys need to be involved, right? And what happens when they're getting shot on these barricade suspects every single time? They're not behind cover, right? So I read one that basically said, I see this all the time too. Like you got an armored vehicle, but then they stand next to the armored vehicle pointing their gun at the house, you know, the blinds of a house, and where this guy could be looking at them with a rifle and they'll never see it coming. So like, why not just stand behind the armored vehicle, look through the glass? Anyway, I was reading one, and this officer, they used the armored vehicle to get a little bit closer to like the back of the house. Basically, it said something like the officer stepped out like from the armored vehicle and was standing somewhere, and the bad guy shot through, I think it was a door, the back door, but it had like a window on it. And it killed him, right? Because he wasn't behind cover. Hey brother, detective from Chicago here. Just wanted to express how refreshing your channel is. We don't practice this stuff enough tactically. We're a mess. Keep up the good work. Be safe. I appreciate it. Thank you. Nice to see someone from Chicago. My brother lives there. Darien. Well, I say Chicago, but Darien. Been a year or year and a half since I've been there. Yeah, these warrants. So like there's just and most of the guys, actually all of them, right, that were doing dynamic entries, or sorry, dynamic no knock warrants for drugs, right? And now they're basically not doing it. And because policy, right? Like, hey, we're not doing that. Slow down. People got hurt. Okay. And now their attitude on that has changed to it's safer. And they look back on what they were doing and say like, it was fun, but it was dumb. Right. I think all around, whether it's very touchy subject, talk about speed and marksmanship. Here's a good example, but I think tactically the emphasis is on speed, because speed is what looks cool, right? Like videos of guys with helmets on and rifles with lasers and nods and stuff, doing things fast. Like that's what people want to see online, and that's what we're going to do. There's a time and a place for it, but especially in law enforcement, even now, more so now, it's a very niche circumstance, which is basically hostage rescue or active shooter. I will agree, though, at the point in which you cross the threshold, you do need to be moving quickly, because your speed might be the only thing that saves you from getting shot in that moment, right? So don't get that confused. But so there's this fascination, I think those are both words, with speed. And I think like I probably maybe express that in my videos when I demonstrate things. People get that idea. Like doing as much work from outside the room before you go in. I have this one video on the YouTube channel that's doing, I think it's probably almost at a million views. It's like shorts. And it's the one of me, I don't even know why. Like, it's just like not even a great video, but it's standing outside of my bedroom and demonstrating how to work the door, right? And like, I realize that it's the internet. People are just talking. You're like, well, you're gonna basically get shot through the drywall. Like most of the comments are that, and it's like, dude, what's your alternative? Go in the room where the guy can now see you and absolutely knows where you are. And when people talk about, oh, they could just shoot through the drywall, or that's not cover, or that vehicle isn't cover. It's like, hey guys, just because we're identifying this as concealment, which is two things that are taught, concealment and cover, doesn't mean that we are not receiving the benefits of using concealment. And so, yeah. But one time, what we had was like 6 or 7 blue on blue incidents in a year training. And it was asked, hey, what do you guys think about this? Why do you think? And realistically, we were asked just to make us feel like we were important, like, well, let's pretend like we care about what they have to say. And I already had an answer because I had thought about it, and I thought this is probably why. And especially like at that level, right? Is what I said was, I think that there's too much emphasis on speed and not enough emphasis on being right. And like, certain someone brushed it off and was like, I just don't think they're seeing the whole picture. It's like, well, fuck, I guess I swear, like, obviously, like, oh, well, when I look at people, I look at the whole body and I collapse down to the hands, which is another conversation that is true no matter what, because it's cops. When we're looking for people, that's what we're looking for, people. We're not looking for hands just everywhere, right? So yeah, you do see the person first, but you might pick up a foot, you might pick up a shoulder, right? We're not looking for this. I never see that. So that's true. But their mind and brain has told them, oh, I see a weapon. Oh, that's a threat. Like, I've just always, oh, how fast can you put around on that? How fast can you put around on that? Instead of taking that extra time that most people don't think that they have because of stress or whatever, and actually just making sure that you're right. So that's another conversation that should probably be explored. There's a lot to explore and do videos on and talk about. Let me read the chat real quick. What's up, Truthful? Check out the book or audiobook, Left of Bang. I have it right here behind me. It's a good book on behavioral profiling, the ability to read human behavior and allow you to see threats earlier. Greetings from Prescott, Arizona. Yeah, I have it here behind me. I have not gotten into that one though, very much. There's another book, actually, Taming the Serpent. Talks about Left of Bang too. He actually, but I don't think he talks about it like he's talking about the book. He's talking about Left of Bang being like having meaning. And so I think Left of Bang probably does have meaning. Yeah, I think reading body behavior is a big deal, but I think more importantly, what's more important is just assuming the worst case scenario every single time and preparing yourself for that moment, regardless of how the suspect is behaving. And those are like decisions that you make, things that you tell them to do, where you're standing, why you're standing there. And I've noticed, well, my experience is like the fighting portion is usually an obvious indication. What's less obvious is that they're going to run from you, probably. But I've run into that. But yeah. Combat vet here. It just needs to be smooth, not fast. Good evening, defenders and disciples. Yeah, look, I mean, here's the thing is people have the freedom to teach what they want to teach and talk about things that they want to talk about and influence other, people, whoever that may be, in the way that they want to try to influence them. I think that cops or students are influenced by what they know right now, right? So if you are right out of the academy and that's the only training that you have, and you go take some course by some guy, like you're going to probably think, because you don't have a portfolio of training, that maybe that's the best way and that's the gospel and that's what you learn and you really like that. But it takes a long time to like do the things and see enough things to, I would say, like, maybe come to a conclusion isn't the right thing to say, but come to a understanding, a better or the best understanding that you can about that thing. And that comes through different experiences with different people, different instructors, different trainers, and learning new things. But yeah. When it comes to marksmanship, the process is, I don't know, not as complicated as people make it seem. We're just, in terms of marksmanship, just completely deviating from what we're taught entirely. So it's like people say, like, "Oh, we're teaching cops to shoot bullseyes and slow shoot." It's like, well, that's not what we're doing. Like, so, okay, hang on a second. If that's the problem, we're teaching cops to shoot slow and be accurate but slow, but they're not doing that. They're shooting fast and missing. Well, then that just like completely defeats the whole point of training. Like, because that's the reason that you train the thing is to develop familiar processes with that, so that in the moment you fall back to your training and you execute what you were taught. So if slow training or shooting slow and just trying to get those hits and that target was the problem, and that's what we're doing on the range. So, that's why cops are shooting fast and just pointing their gun and pulling the trigger. Well, that doesn't make any sense. No, in no other training would you say, well, this is the way that we're doing it, but we expect to see something else out there. So I have a different opinion about that stuff based on what I see. And people don't have to like it. It's fine with me. But anyways, I went off on something. It also pertains to good groups and how they interact. Yeah, how they move and interact. So like the first thing that I talk to my students about in both of my classes right now, and all the classes that I have, because even though I focus on simunition training and force on force training, great opportunity to talk about marksmanship. Why? Because it's not a discussion in force on force training. I've actually had people tell me you can't train marksmanship in force on force training, nor should you even like talk about it or address it, which is crazy. Like, why would we see what cops are doing out on the street, watch them do the same thing in force on force training, and just be like, do better? Like, oh, that sucked. That doesn't make sense, because with the things that, essentially I teach cops to do, or the thing that I teach cops to do, we can correct it. Right? They have to do it themselves, but I can give them the information that they can correct it. And if you go from A, which is absolutely terrible, to B, which is what you should be doing, I don't care what environment you're doing it in, that seems to be, a good thing, right? Yeah. When I was on patrol, I'd spend hours per day on foot in busy places reading people. On my days off, I'd go to a nearby town and do the same. So, yeah, again, I think that comes from experience too, though. So, like, something that happened to me, and I would have handled the situation differently to begin with, but very early on, got behind a vehicle taking an aggravated robbery, and they did the thing they always do. As soon as you get behind them, by the time you're figuring this out, they're pulling into a place. So pulling basically behind them, they have nowhere to go. It's dark. There's, it's not like a business. It's like the side of like a rundown apartment, basically. And I basically called out the driver, and my thought was, well, if I call him back, then he can't drive off. And I don't remember at the time whether or not, I don't believe they had any space to go anywhere. And if they tried to, they would have just damaged my car a lot to get out. So in retrospect, I probably would have gotten closer to prevent that from happening maybe, but would have kept him in the car because he was already contained, right? He's not going anywhere as long as he stays there. Got the passenger out, right? Anyways, got the driver out because I was thinking, oh, I don't want him to drive off, which is what you should do if you are worried about that. And he's walking back, has his hands up, and then he drops his hands and pulls his pants up. And shortly after that, he runs, right? And I don't even think at the time I recognized the visual cues of that he was going to do that. But what that was him pulling his pants up, right? So he didn't trip over his, I guess, pants, right? Anyways, he ran off and with hit underneath the car. K9 showed up and bit him, and then we got them both. But that's something that you either have to be told to like look out for, but it's better to see it and go, oh yeah, that was right, or the first time seeing it. So, and that's not something you're going to see in public, right? People aren't pulling up their pants and then running. So, yeah. Let's see here. We're going to die as old men and never lose that. Oh, about looking at people. I don't know. I've talked about, I think it was I've talked in a podcast episode about kind of turning off the cop thing, right? When you're not at work. I'll tell you right now, as soon as I pull out, like I'm not even there anymore. But I am aware, right? Like I go out with my kids or my wife or whatever, conscious about that, and look around, you know, as a general behavior to just be aware of your surroundings, because you can see a lot of things coming, right? Like I've been thinking about making a video that's kind of for civilians. It doesn't pertain to everybody because it's a crime that's probably not committed everywhere. But basically telling them like, for 3 or 4 years, I watched criminals commit violent crimes because that was what my job was. So I was able to do investigations, figure out not who it was, but what vehicle they were going to be in or whatever. And ultimately, you don't have anything until they do the crime. And if you try to stop them beforehand, you're not going to get anything. You have to let them go. So, what I noticed, well, what is always true is like they talk about being, you know, a crime of opportunity. Like, well, they were an opportunity, so they, you know, committed their robbery, right? And that is true. They do look for opportunities, right? But when people say a crime of opportunity, I think most people probably think like, oh, like they were just driving by and they saw a lady walking with her purse and they jumped out and grabbed it, right? And jumped back in the car. Or they were pulling through the parking lot and they saw a guy go, you know, walking to his car with a bag of money bag from the bank, and they jumped out and robbed him. That's not really what happens. Every criminal, and I would say organization, but crews, like multiple guys, at least 2, that are out there doing whatever it is they're doing, they never just roll up and jump out and do it because they're not that dumb. Like they are not intelligent most of the time, but they at least want to get away with what they're there for, right? So they almost always make a pass, right? And it could be one pass, right? So they pull in and they see somebody walking to their car and they go, okay, let me come down the other aisle this way. And, you know, these vehicles are usually tinted windows, usually have paper tags. And there may not be a lot of opportunity to see it. coming, but they're always watching. They may watch across the street and then pull up into the place, right? So I would just say that there's oftentimes, or almost all the time, indicators that something's going to happen. Or they could be, let's say, for example, so a crime that's committed in our area is called like sliding, where it's like they go into a female, usually, their car, and they take their purse while they're at the gas pump, right? So what do we know about how that could happen? Well, they could pull into a gas station and they could, you know, do a lap. Like they see somebody, they see a car pull up. Okay, let me park at this big gas pump, right? That's your cue, because they also are going to position their vehicle usually in a way in which they can get in and get out. Not going to run across the parking lot to do that, right? So, but what's another way they could do that? They could already be in the parking lot, right? So they could sit in their car at the gas pump and just be hanging out and wait for a person to pull up to the pump next to them. And as soon as they see, oh, that's a lady, she's by herself, there's an opportunity. But that's something that you could have seen pulling in there, right? So you see that pulling in there, park somewhere else, or just keep your eye on it and anticipate that it could happen. Different ways to do that. You know, obviously keep your purse on. You don't have one at all, because they're really just there for your purse. So what was I going with that? We were talking about something. Oh, we're talking about like being aware. That could also be an indication that they are about to fight. Yeah, about pulling the pants up. Yep, that's true. I had that happen to me yesterday. And yeah, I had that happen to me yesterday and really thought this was going to be a fight and didn't like any part of it. Not going to get into the details about the person that was supposed to be there to help me, but it wasn't good. Thought this dude was going to fight for sure. Had that look in his eye, and he was a massive dude. Like, I'm 5'6", he was 6'1", 6'2", and the big dude talking crap right from the beginning. I said, hey, come here, let me talk to you real quick, because I try to be cool with everybody. That's a big part of what I do, is just, now there's an downplay things, right? We talked about that. You've seen me talk about it. Stall for longer. Hey, it's not a big deal, just relax. Hey, yeah, dude, just like, hey, I'm just gonna check this real quick and you'll be on your way. Well, you know, tell them that if you feel like you need to do that. But cops also do that to a fault, right? They actually continue to downplay it into a dangerous situation. But this was beyond that. Like, basically the guy walked, he was trying to, you know, kind of start something, but like show like he was a badass, right? So when I said, hey, come here, let me talk to you, he said, you know, said some things like, I didn't effing do anything or whatever, which is a clear indication like he did something probably, and he's not being a good guy. And he came towards me and I stopped 15 feet from this guy, and he continued to walk until he was within arm's reach of me, and that just like pissed me off. And you know, so I kind of just like put up my arm like this and backed up. It's like, don't walk up on me, like, I'm gonna do whatever. And I was like, do you live here? And he was like, yeah, I do. And I already knew he didn't. I was like, all right, now you're irritating me, basically is what I said. And then he was like, oh, you want me to do? You want to put my hands behind my back? I'm like, sure, do that. And he did. And like I said, didn't get the help. But anyways, so, but he I think he pulled up his pants. I can't remember, but that's just another indication that something's probably not right. But I think that I would say, like, in most situations that cops are involving themselves with bad guys, they're almost at the point where seeing a visual cue that something isn't right with the situation, it's like almost too late, right? Because they're already too close. They're already on them. Like, we watched a body cam before I made this thing public to, you know, for YouTube to recommend it, I guess. And the guy had his hand behind his back. We watched a couple good videos, so if you weren't here, I guess you could maybe watch it back. I'm not sure. But there was LAPD responded. The guy had his hand behind his back and was saying like, "Don't do it, don't do it." And they went into the house to arrest him for restraining order. The guy had his hand back; it was empty. Then he went back behind, like, "Don't make me do it." And the officer had his gun out. The other officer actually never deployed his taser. Okay. He ended up drive stunning later. But like, okay, well, right? We talk about visual cues. Like, I know we're talking about that's like an overt act of like aggression and I'm about to hurt you. Versus like, oh, he didn't look right. Oh, he was doing these little things, right? This is, and so what is that, right? Like, okay, well, we're talking in this chat room or chat, we're talking about being able to pick up on these little things that indicate that there's a problem. But we're so far into this problem that we can't even perceive the threat of serious bodily injury directly in front of us. And what ends up happening is he gets so close to the suspect. While the suspect has his hand like as he's going to pull a gun, the one cop has his gun out and he ends up like basically trying to grab the guy and control him. It's the slow boil. You have to explain that. But and it's like, what are we doing? So I'm not concerned about picking up on little things that indicate like, oh, maybe something isn't right with the situation. Now I have a video, which, you know what? Give me a second. I'll pull it up. It's on my hard drive. Can't. So I have a foot pursuit class that's coming out, and in that class, I play a video, and I could have made the video 3 hours long, but essentially, talk about running with your gun out when it's appropriate to do that, and when is it appropriate to do that, and how can you justify that that's what you need to be doing. And I use these body cameras to show these officers these visual cues, right? These things that you should be seeing that you're not, because you're trying to tackle people that are armed, that indicate this guy's probably armed and he might try to kill you, because that's what you could expect to happen, right? And so in the video, in the videos, in every single video that I got them together for this course to show these officers what they should be looking for, and it's suspect's hands are at his waistline, which is in every foot pursuit there ever is, right? To some degree. Suspect looking back towards the officer, and I freeze it, right? When the guys are doing these things, like, that's what you should be noticing. That's your justification for being able to have your gun out and instead of preparing yourself to tackle somebody, prepare yourself for an engagement. And so start thinking about those things: cover, moving to cover, the distance from the guy. Yeah, we want to catch him, but we don't want to get hurt, right? And would you rather get hurt and catch him, or get him on another day, right? So those are some, visual cues. And I'm pretty sure I'll have the only foot pursuit course ever to exist. That's cool. Saw that horrible one of the officer in Las Cruces, New Mexico, stabbed the neck. Civilian stopped and shot the perpetrator. Tried to hold the blood in his body with his hands on his neck. Yeah, I didn't watch the whole thing. I saw him get stabbed, and then I stopped. I never even commented on it, really. I didn't comment directly on it, but I did make some story posts about trespassing investigations that I was on and what I do. Like, I just treat everything as if that's going to happen. And I'm not speaking about his situation specifically because I'm not familiar with it. I saw it, but I didn't look into it really. Don't know the backstory. And so I'm not speaking about that. But, a lot of times the only thing we have is our cars. I'm not cover, concealment, doesn't matter, whatever. That's all you have. And so, use your car as a barrier. I do it all the time. Like, don't approach people until they're in compromising positions. Hey man, who are you? Oh, F you. Okay, well, I'm not going to go over there by that guy. That guy's not a polite, person. And so, there was a trespass investigation I did where walked in, homeless guy, right? Transient or whatever, and refusing to leave the restaurant. And I walked in, he's sitting at the table, and immediately when I walk in, I put a table between me and him. And I'm even have distance myself from that table when I'm talking to him. Well, with those, it's just like, hey man, let's go. You got to go. So he stands up, he's not real happy. And as he starts walking out, I maneuver myself around the table so that, the table is between me and him the whole time until he walks outside. Now that he's outside the door, I walk up to the door and I look out and I make sure, okay, he's like 15 feet away. I can go outside now. And so that's just like what I do. I feel like, and nobody does that. I say that, like, surely there are people, but like, that's not what you see in these body cameras, not what you see cops doing. And like, if we're watching a body camera that's an officer involved shooting or a critical incident, we know someone's getting hurt. And then you can just look at these videos like I did, right? In the LAPD one, I can watch it and I can pause it and be like, I don't really like the way this looks. This is possibly what's going to happen. And I mean, that's what happened, right? What was it? Well, I talked about he had his taser out. Like, he didn't tase him in time. Should have tased him as soon as he had the opportunity to do it. He had his radio in his hand. Oh, this is usually bad because when you have your radio in your hand, you have your taser in your hand, your gun in your hand, you can't do really anything great. And so he drops his gun, right? I think that cop dropped his gun on the ground, picked it up. And like both those cops could have been killed. So like I like to pause it as I'm doing this so I can, because this stuff is like redundant, it's the same thing over and over again. And there's times where you watch, like, for example, on the home invasion one, we watched the officer had his light out, or his handheld light in his hand. It was dark and he had a weapon light. And as soon as he saw a suspect, my like recommendation is like start transitioning to your pistol light. So if you do get into engagement, you can shoot one-handed. And he didn't do that. He got surprised by a guy but ultimately ended up shooting one-handed. So again, like these are things that you could literally write down, be like, I'm going to try not to do this. I'm going to try not to do that. And you will be better for it for sure. And so those are some examples. Another one, a trespassing investigation at a really crappy hotel probably. And went inside the lobby and the dude was asleep. Hey man, get up, let's go. And he was not happy. But it doesn't matter, like treat it the same. And I used a pillar that was inside the lobby to put between me and him. Same thing, as he's getting his stuff and he's walking out, that guy was really not happy. He ended up walking outside. I stayed by the pillar. He stayed right on the outside of the door. I just stayed where I was. Said, hey, can I have another unit over here? He did have scissors that I saw in his backpack. And so, like, I just like to feel safe, and I'm also confident that when the time comes, like, I'll do the right thing because I'll be prepared for it. Letting a situation get too far is due to the situation gradually getting worse and officers' threshold for doing something increasing along the way. I think it's like the situation is gradually getting worse because they're letting the situation go on for far too long. And the officer's threshold for doing something increases along the way. Yeah. Pretty much. So there's this thing that I heard, and it's like goes essentially like the greater your skills, the greater your skill set, the more you can allow a situation to deteriorate before taking action. And presumably, I would assume like still have a positive result. And I think that's true. And I like it kind of, I can only really kind of sum it up to a marksmanship perspective, whereas my threshold for pulling the trigger when it's needed to is just high, like, right? And I think in order for it to be high, you have to have like a above average skill set and also like morals and things like that. There was a recent video, And I mean, every so often there's a video of an officer involved shooting, and justified, usually always. But it's one of those situations where it's like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And there's so many examples of that. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. You know, I see it and I'm just like, think the reason that happened was something other than you truly felt like, oh, like you were, you know, there was one too where I know you guys have seen that one where they're like calling a guy back in a hotel. He has warrants and he's like on his knees and the cop's giving really terrible commands and the guy's like confused and and the dude's on his knees and he's like this and he goes like pulls his pants up. Like, first of all, you know, how many, if you're a cop and you've pointed your gun at people during critical incidents or felony events or whatever, for whatever reason, like you've come across people that are constantly like pulling their pants up or digging for something, right? Like it just happens and you go, oh, hey, keep your hands up, right? Cops aren't out there on average shooting people who are walking back and go to pull their pants up. Like you can expect that to happen, okay? And I know you guys have seen that video I was talking about though, and he goes to like pull his shorts up and you do that again, I'm gonna shoot you. And I think the guy was scared or whatever. And you know, like I think like this, like people don't reach back for guns with both hands, right? Like, you know, something like this and you're moving your body, like that's okay, maybe there's something there, but I'm still, especially nowadays, like I got to see the thing, you know. And you know, that went on for a long time and it looked real bad and nobody liked that. Like there wasn't a single cop that was like, oh yeah, I see that. Like they're all like, that's crazy. And guess what? Cop was not, you know, I think it was maybe charged or acquitted or whatever, but he didn't go to jail for it. And that's what happens. I don't like that. Like I think that that's a terrible decision and you should be able to call that a terrible decision. But there was a recent one too. I don't know who it was. I'm not going to give details because I don't want people to know I didn't like it as of right now. But there was a barrier between the cops and the guy had not a gun. And officer shot the guy a lot. And I don't know what the end result was. Didn't pay too much attention. I just looked at it and I'm just like, come on. Like, guy couldn't get to you. So, I don't know. I think in many years probably an honest discussion about that will happen, but there's a lot of things surrounding the decision to do this that I won't talk about in fear of like I don't know. It's just not the right time for it. But I think if most cops that are surrounded by other cops in the business or whatever kind of get what I'm hinting at and the reasons why some cops maybe do certain things that they can technically legally but probably shouldn't. Let me read some of these. By slow boil, I meant letting the situation go too far is due to... Oh, I already read that. Yeah. The issue was the officer walked up too close. Yeah. And the 21-foot rule is also not really like... It's just like a number, right? Like the average. Like I don't understand like people attacking that when people are like 21-foot rule, 20. It's like, yeah, let's just use something. Who cares? Like people are like, oh, it doesn't actually mean that it's 21 feet. It could be 14 feet. It could be whatever. It's like, yeah, it could be 30. Like who cares? But like give somebody something to reference. Also, if you're in this chat room, if you want to like this, or not chat room, I keep saying that, but if you want to like this live, that might help it reach more people. That will help me help you, and that would be cool. Here it is. Warning graphic. I don't know if you tried to post a link or something. One of my mentors said you have limited time to decide what you are going to do on scene and about 90 seconds to go hands-on. That served me well for my career. Well, I mean, the person or the situation dictates when that time, comes. So I don't know, putting a time on it doesn't make sense. I mean, I've had multiple times like where I've grabbed a guy. Actually, I know of the 3 times it's happened to me in the past 3 months. And it's like, why am I grabbing this dude by myself? And I don't, like, the people that are there are supposed to help you. It's like, I'm grabbing him because now is the opportunity, and he's already demonstrated that he didn't care about what we were trying to do. And it's like, I grab the guy and I have one hand, and they're just like still trying to talk to him. Like, dude, I'm going to get punched in the face. Like, grab this guy. Come on. It's a problem. More so nowadays with policing, I believe. Like, I think there's a lot of things that play into that. I think there's, well, I don't want to do the paperwork. Or, yeah, pretty much probably that. I think it's, I don't want to do the paperwork. And the other one. Oh, and also just not being able to identify like that it's time, like being completely lost. So I think it's those 2 things. It irritates the crap out of me. Sorry, that was typed poorly. Yes, you inferred correct meaning. Regarding the lack of officer safety being exercised, in my estimation, many officers let fear of judgment from other complacent officers cause them to ignore officer safety. Yeah, probably. So like, I think like it's more, and this is just my experience. It's especially if you're younger and the person is older and they have more time on. Like they think like, and you're being safe and you're trying to make good decisions. I think they're just like, dude, whatever. I've been doing this for long enough. In fact, I've experienced like those same words being said. But there was a situation where potentially robber ran back to hotel. He had already robbed the place once previously, and kind of searched the area. People have already shown up at the room where he maybe was in. So by the time I get there, I grab the shield and I go up there. First of all, the cops are like standing right by the door when there's 15 feet down the hallway. There's a 90-degree right cut off to the other hallway. So I'm like, hey, let's go back here. So we go back, 2 or 3 apartments away or rooms away. I have the shield. Like this is well, maybe I'll leave that part out. But essentially, we learned that he wasn't supposed to be in there, was checked out, so nobody's supposed to be in there. So we got consent from the owner to check it. There's some administrative stuff on our side that we have to do to be able to do that, which is like get authorization to check for somebody in a place where they're not supposed to be. And the reason that we're actually checking is because we don't believe he's in there. So based on the fact that he's not supposed to be there, we don't think he's there, we're going to check it. And an officer came up with the key and just bypassed me. I have the shield and he's just in front of me. And I'm like, oh, hang on a second. Back up. And he just like, they're looking at me. Well, he was looking at me like I was pretty dumb, And end up getting him back, getting on the radio, getting authorization to do the thing we're about to do. And then like goes and just is in front of me, opens the door, got a gun in one hand. I'm just like, whatever. Like there's nothing I can do about this. So I haven't experienced the fear of judgment. But I have experienced older officers essentially looking at you like you don't know what you're talking about, and I've been doing this longer, and I've experienced that. If you know there's an issue in your department or policing in general and you can't talk about it for fear of retribution, that should tell you everything you need to know about your industry. Yeah. Actually, I mean, that is true on a lot of things. And actually, Defenders and Disciples, who's in here, and the last podcast we did, which is on, I guess it's my YouTube channel in the podcast section, We had that conversation before we went live on the podcast. Just a disclaimer about if I'm really good at not saying things I don't think I can, but if he happened to say some things that I thought maybe I was even a party to, then I wouldn't be able to use it. But what I was referring to is less about the organization, and more about how mad other officers would get about what I said. No, it's true. Yeah. Have you viewed the body cam of the Acorn cop? I have, but we've talked about it a few times on a live. And anyways, real quick before I forget. So about what I was talking about, like, don't want to say this because of the way people would perceive it. I've kind of, when I say like cops would just rather go out there and do the thing without preparing for the thing. I mean, that should tell you everything you kind of need to know about that, right? Why would people continuously put themselves in dangerous situations with dangerous people but not prepare for it? What's more important to them, do you think? And that should kind of answer that question. And I think it's like this thing. It's like this status, right? This perceived status of recognition. I'm not saying for recognition of like doing good work and getting the bad guy. I'm talking about recognition for doing certain things. But about the Acorn cop, I'm not gonna do that video. I'm not gonna really do body cam videos probably. I say that. I don't know. I'm still figuring that part out. I just want to keep doing the training videos that I'm doing, and whatever else comes up. I have a gear video I need to do. Actually, I'm gonna have a couple gear videos. But the way that I was doing these body cam videos, they're just time consuming, and the research that's involved. And I know like it's good. I think it's good anyways, and it's something different. Right? I don't know. It's just not worth the time right now. And maybe it is. Like, I don't know. It's just my goal is not to just get a bunch of subscribers. I mean, that is the goal. It is a goal. But I would rather just have people that like the stuff that I want them to like about the channel. Like, you know, when you look at, we'll say like a channel or whatever, I mean, you have to ask yourself at some point, maybe not what do you want it to be known for, but like what do you want the channel to be known for? And I don't want the channel to be known for a channel that does these body cam videos, because there's channels like that. And I just I don't know. Not that fun to me, to be honest with you. But I'm not saying I won't do it, but maybe I'll do it. I've been doing them on the Surviving the Street community, paid community that Defenders and Disciples is in, a couple other instructors. And that is linked in the description if you want to go look at the about page. But I'm actually going to do those, like what we did here, like the after action reviews, there, because I can just sit and talk about it like I am now and just discuss it and kind of put it up rather quickly. Although the last one I did was 27 minutes and that wasn't intended to be that long. But I don't have to do the cuts and the this and the that and go do the research and pull this photo. It's just straight tactics about what I'm seeing and things to look out for. Supposed to be easier to do. Loving the CQB content and the what is the SMLI us? Oh, small unit movement. Wait, did I do small unit movement? Or are you talking about just like one man CQB kind of stuff? Probably that. Yeah, I mean, I'm just like limited to what's available to me right now, and that's what's available is myself. And so, and the facility, I'm kind of getting to the point where it's not really like, what do I make a video about, I guess. But I think the next video I'm going to make, which I might do Wednesday, is this CQB thing, because I'm on the CQB thing, where you see people riding the door into the room. Somebody in one of my comments in one of my videos asked if I could look at this video of these guys doing this tactic, where they're as they're entering the room, they're like basically opening the door, riding the door, or just throwing the door open and going to the corner without doing any of the other stuff. So that's a good one. I want to try and do that one better. The ones I've been doing somehow, some way. So if I can. What do you think I need? I'm getting ammunition and other lethal options, canned goods, and other long shelf life food. Well, I think canned food is not really like a go-to prepper thing. It's usually like these other like dried meals and add water, because canned food's only a couple years probably. So you could as like a maybe initial supply, but you're probably gonna like that stuff's probably gonna go bad before you get to use it. But I'm not a prepper or into that stuff, so I don't have anything. But if I could, or if I was, it would be the things like that. Like food is like obviously a necessity. I would get like solar charging things, right? Power goes out. So like just to charge, well, maybe you don't have your phone, but charge anything you might need charged. Solar powered stuff. If you have the money, a gas generator for your house. I'm not talking about bugging out, but just surviving. Antibiotics, that's a good one. Water treatment options and first aid, seeds for garden, that's a good one. Should have thought of that. Actually, I just talked to my wife about building a garden in the backyard. We need to do that because freaking groceries are just too expensive anyways. That's the reason why, not because we're worried about the end of the world, but because we can't, not that we can't afford groceries, but like we've been to this grocery. I got 4 kids, so they're just eating absolutely everything in the house. So yeah, comms. Man, I follow this guy. I think it's on Instagram. I don't know how I came across it. Maybe it's YouTube, but crazy comms guy. Like hooking stuff up to his car radio to get GPS signal to like send text messages to, I guess, a phone that's in the house, but he was like doing it from his car. It was like insane. How much food and water, Amber, will fit in your car with your family? Most of us have to bug out. I think you're asking him. If I had a bunch of money, I would, and that shouldn't be the case. You should be prepared. I'm not really prepared, to be honest with you. But if you find some good stuff, let me know. Especially if it's on sale. The CQB content is great. Any chance of doing classes? A good friend of mine here has hosted Craig Douglas and Ed Calderon, and we have access to a school and at least 2 places of worship for Sims. Yes. So hopefully within the next 30 days or so, I'm going to have a class that's called Active Defender. And the premise of the class is that we understand what active shooters are, and active shooters understand what their role is. But the problem is that it seems that officers don't understand what their role is. And so based off of Uvalde and some other things that, have happened, transpired, the perception of the things that I'm seeing is that cops don't really understand what their role is. They lack the confidence and the will to seek out the conflict. And so this course is called Active Defender, and the course is basically active shooter or responding to critical situations where you basically have to make exigent entries. And so it's that. Like, And, you know, I got the class, I got it written up, I got the plan, I got it all, you know. And one of the things that I'm going to say in that class is, and this is me targeting the most important thing. That's what I do in my classes. In my vehicle class, it's all about repping, engaging the guy from your vehicle. Because I don't really care how you approach the guy who's down. We've done our job. Like, there's never been a cop who's been ambushed. I say that, right? But like, you get what I'm saying. Okay, cover down on him, cover down on the car, approach the car, check that first. I got it. You should know how to do that. You should make it look good. But that's not where my concern lies. My concern lies you being all jacked up, trying to get out of your car and just doing something to do something and being unaccountable and, you know, not being able to take care of the threat at the first available opportunity. So that's what we're going to do here today. Okay, we're going to rep that over and over and over again. And I still have people that in the, you know, critique of the class say like, oh, I wish we could have done taking suspects into custody. Don't care, you know. And so the active defender course, there's going to be a lot more, there's a lot more individual CQB skills involved in that. Because it's going to be solo and duo responses, and also in the foot pursuits course, it's going to be solo and duo responses with other officers arriving, right, to support. And the foot pursuit course is going to go into the, I think, because just the way the time fits, is going to go into the after action portion of approaching and waiting for assets and things like that, and other officers arriving. Because at least in my agency, like, they don't do it at all. So I'd like to see them doing that. But to answer your question, active defender should be hopefully ready in the next 30 days or so. It's an active shooter course basically. So I answered that. Make a bug out bag. Definitely thinking about buying a bush gun, some type of repeater, lever, or bolt action. I live where most bug out to my priorities are a little different. Here's something funny. So like my dad, I think growing up, you know, I was born in the 90s, you know, 1990. And my dad, you know, he, I won't say we prepped, but I just always remember having jugs of water. And you know, we always just stored water. And when I got older, I came up with this funny thing. My dad was always a really funny guy. And I used to say, you guys feel free to steal this. Well, you guys sound like you're preppers, so maybe you won't. But I was like, listen, I'm not the prepper. I'm the guy that you are preparing yourself for. Like, you know what I mean? So you guys are doing the prepping for me, and I'm the guy that's coming to take your stuff. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a joke, but it's funny. So that's my like comeback to like not being a prepper is like I'm the guy that's going to get everybody else's stuff. It's a joke. Yeah, so the defender course info. So you don't know this. Most people don't know this. I haven't talked about it publicly, and I won't talk about it until that time it's necessary. But I have a sub company basically, with a website and all that stuff. And basically it's like safety and security audits for schools, places of worship, things like that. But that's part of the offer. You know, basically, a part of the services that could be rendered is active shooter stuff. So, yeah, if that fits into what you're kind of saying, because you talked about places of worship. Should be an oral board question scenario. You are the first on scene of an active killer and cover is at least 3 minutes away. Is that a question? You are first on scene of an active killer and cover is at least 3 minutes away. Backup, right? What are you asking though? But here's something while you're clarifying that question. In the academy, I remember this, and this is something that was stuck with me. Oh, well, I mean, you got to finish the question. Like, I guess let's go. What comma? What do you do? But they asked in the academy class that, and they showed a video, I think, of like a cop like waiting for X amount of minutes before they went in and people were dead or whatever. And they asked that, and they're like, how many of you are going in and before backup? And you may be surprised at how many people said that they were not going to go in until they had backup. Which maybe lately you're not surprised. It was that the active shooter in Florida, where like I think it was a cop, right? I think he got charged too, but for not doing anything. But then the charges were dropped. So I think that you could feel really helpless not having any training and go and hearing that happen and like basically knowing like, oh shit, this sucks. I'm basically just like target practice, you know? And I hope that I can make a bunch of noise and hopefully this person stops doing what they're doing. And I think a lot of cops know that they're not the person for that. I mean, it's been like, you know, some recent active shooter events that have happened. You know, shooters shooting. Well, there was at least 2 cops that weren't responding and then were worried about other things. Do you think that those cops also thought that they were going to respond to an active shooter and like put the bad guy down if they were ever encountered with one? No. Like they never thought that they would. In fact, they probably had the opposite thought, that if that happens, I'm not doing that. Got hired in 1998. The oral board questions were: you stop another cop who is drunk and you cover. Yeah. I mean, they still have questions like that. Yeah. Like, oh, you see an officer sleeping on the job. What do? I go straight to the lieutenant and I tell him he's sleeping. Anyways. All right. It's 11:30. I don't want to be up here too late. Go see what my wife's doing. And I'll be honest, I like sitting here and just talking, more so than trying to do something for the live. But maybe, I don't know. I thought that it seems like you know, current viewers is 63. That's a lot. So if you're not subscribed and you're watching this, well, I guess you don't have to be subscribed. You have to be subscribed to post in the chat, but you don't have to be subscribed to watch. So if you're not, you should be. But anyways, I don't know. I kind of like sitting around just talking and answering questions and whatever comes up, rather than trying to do something. I think like I wanted to try and do something where, you know, police oriented, but alive, that's police oriented, that isn't just sitting here talking. I think like gamers have that like on lockdown, where they just they're able to like make stuff happen on the screen, so it's entertaining and fun, I guess. I had the ability to run towards trouble, assess the situation, and act without thinking too much. Always thought we needed a way to test for that skill in our first responders. They don't want to test for it though. Well, I mean, I guess like test is it? You don't have to pass a test, do you? I guess, right? So, I guess like if there isn't a pass fail, just want to see. Sure, we could do that. They do that pretty much now, right? Like they have a class and they see what's happening in the class. But you can't Like, they're not going to test for things that we maybe think are important because they can't have cops failing. Then there's no cops out on the street. Yeah, I agree. Like in my exploiting accuracy class, beyond it being a class, there's a way to implement like what I'm teaching on a larger scale, and I talked about it with some people at the time, almost a year ago now. We're like, "Oh, this is a great idea. I think this could work." I'm like, "I think so too." And essentially, it's very simple. Like, it could be implemented by a department rather easily within even their it's basically, well, I call them exposures, right? So it's not a qualification. Just what's important more than them passing it is them being exposed to the situation, to deliberately habituate themselves to the process of physiological responses and marksmanship. Those two things. And but what can happen and what I've seen is like I have great results in very short period of time, right? Teaching this concept and idea. But I've also seen other officers doing the same thing not get it. And it's not that they can't do it, it's that psychologically they can't disassociate themselves from, oh my gosh, right? And even when they know what's going to happen, basically, they still do it. And you see cops that are that, right? Because 9 out of 10 cops or 8 out of 10 cops, they do that thing first. We talk about it, we make adjustments. They do exactly what they're supposed to be doing. But 1 or 2 of those, on average, it's not even really that. I've just had probably 2 people that repeated the same thing they did the first time when they had the information and they knew. So they just it didn't click to them. They didn't register. And it's not to say that they won't get it. And you could keep doing it and then, okay, now I'm getting it. That's certainly should be the case. But I could see where you would be able to identify officers who, even when they know what's going to happen, are still bang, 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 right? And it's like, okay, well, if you know what's going to happen, and we've been doing this, we've done this 3 times, and we're on quarter 4 in year 1, and you still are doing it, what do you think you will do on the street? You will do that. And so if departments really wanted to, they could say, well, and if somebody down the road does implement this process of like exposures, I hope that they, or suggest that they at least internally, note who these people are or whatever, and their performances. They might not, because then that maybe could be recalled, right? Be like, oh, well, you let that person out on the street and you saw they couldn't handle high stress situations. But if they could, that would add more legitimacy to the idea, right? Because if you have, well, just use numbers, like we had 80 officers that were passing this thing, and we had 3 that were not passing, but like were doing what they were told, exposures and being able to do it, execute it. But we had 5 officers that were never able to do it. And it turns out collectively amongst the 80 officers, whatever numbers I'm using, they shot less and hit more often on average than the other 5 officers who got into 2 shootings and did the same thing they were doing in the exposures out there. That would be significant information to have. So tracking it and assessing and testing, or whatever you want to call it. I suggest that they do that, because that would help. But I don't think that they will, again, for the state. Anyways, guys, I'm gonna head out. Appreciate you coming by for the live. I will see you guys later.